Hey, good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Welcome to another afternoon of understanding African spirituality, where the Vakiba lands, understanding African spirituality. I appreciate y'all joining in today. Hopefully, y'all were able to sit and watch the African history class from World of Vakiba land. Now, there is a conscious statement. Well, happy holidays. And we're asking you that, in your holiday experience, increase your awareness of God so that you can get the fullness of the celebration. Let this be about the rebirth of your awareness of the God in you. This week for us is the God incarnate, which is the God on the inside, and then what happens when the God on the inside connects with the God on the outside? Ooh, being one with the Creator, knowing that everything that you do is governed by God. Ooh, you can't get no better than the holidays than that. And so we giving gifts to our children, saying, letting them know that we are expecting wonderful things because they are the gift that God brought, and they're gifts within inside them that I brought to this earth to be given. And so we are raising our children to help them become aware of who God has called them to be and what God will call them to do. So happy holidays. And hopefully that's how you're looking at the holiday season, because that's how I'm doing it. And so we're here in African Understanding African Spirituality class. And when I was charged to do the African history class, I said, and it all never makes sense for me. It never makes sense to teach people about their history, but not teach them the spiritual essence of who the people were in the time in which we're studying, because that will help define them as a people, how they see themselves in relationship to God, how they see each other in relationship to God, and how does that work? And so we want to embrace understanding African spirituality, because there is nothing disconnected from God. And the way I go about this is, again, I am like African history. I am not the expert. I am what we call in my community the Malekio. I am the seeker. I'm always seeking deeper understanding of God, how He communicates, how He interacts, how He's in everything and all things, just opening my awareness. And so, what we want to do is do an academic study, because there are necessarily no writings of ancient spirituality, or their understanding of it. And so at one particular time, European society went back to say, hey, let's learn about these primitive people, when they were literally trying to convince themselves that they were the superior. They came first, not the fact that we did. And what they did not know or understand, that they were unlocking the truth for a moment such as this. An opportunity for us to go back and get what they tried to get us to leave behind, and get the wisdom, the ancient wisdom of our ancestors, and make it work for us today. And so I take a look at the book, African Religions and Philosophies by John Mbiti. Now, in my studies, when I joined my church, and I can tell you, with this particular book first, it's not talking about a particular tribe of people. It's not. It's talking about a trying to find the commonalities of African spirituality. Now, for me, when as I was coming up and I was seeking my Malakio days was kicking in, of course, this has been my home, the Pan African Orthodox Christian Church, and coming up as and moving towards leadership, moving towards being a full time missionary, moving towards being a youth minister, now working on being African priest. Yes, there were mandatory readings, and then there were suggested readings. Well, the book in question was not necessarily mandatory, because they said they took what they could out of this particular book, and you could see it being infused in our current spiritual processes and our current realities. And so I said, okay, well, let me give the Kibalan and the adults and the mothers and anybody else seeking to understand African spirituality, let me give them a academic perspective. Because you hear a lot of the rah rah arguing, but yeah, they say once you learn about God, you're not arguing anything because you understand that everybody has a perspective. Why? Because it all comes from us. There's not one thing that comes from us. If you take a look at the ancient map and the beginnings of the book, it tells you if there are 4,200 different tribes in Africa, there are 4,200 different views of spirituality. So no one has a lock on, yeah, this is it. No. Spirituality from an African people embodies everything. It embodies all things. How you laugh, how you play, how you run, how you sing, dance, how you cook, how you plant, how you work. It embodies everything. When it rains, how it rains, why it rains. It embodies all of it. So there's not a space that's disconnected from African spirituality. And that is the part of that we don't understand because it took first, so we created all of it. Let's get that straight. There is no faith that does not come off the continent of Africa. It's not very little. So when people are asking about the mode of spirituality, or are you monotheism, polytheism, or animism? Well, animism means, tiny little, a whole bunch of gods. You got gods in plants, mountains, rocks, everything. Souls, conscious. Everything has a consciousness. Everything is vibrant of God. Polytheism is you have little gods, demigods under the a great big God. Monotheism is only one God. Guess what? Africans created all three. Yes. So there's no hold when you sit down and you say, well, I believe in polytheism. Well, it's African. I believe in animism. That's African. I believe in monotheism. Man, man, that's African. Yo, one love, Terasa. How you doing? I just saw you pop up. I can't see everybody because I'm not set up that way, but I saw you. Thank you. One love. And so monotheism. And so it doesn't matter how you go. It matters on your commitment to that spiritual discipline. Because again, we taught the world spirituality. And in order to try to control a people whose spirit, who had a direct connection with the ancestors, with the creator, with Mother Earth, you had to come up with an organized means of oppressing that understanding and that connection. And so we took a deeper look, into what African spirituality means. And so they said that there are four areas or four categories, right? Let me make sure my mic is on. Yes. Four categories of African spirituality: Mtu, Kintu, Hantu, and Kuntu. Mtu is everything that has a sense of intellect, which is God, deities, and there's something they call the living dead, which is ancestors who have recently passed, who are still in memory of those who are living. They are easily accessible. They have not gone on to that higher state of spirituality or spiritual existence because you can call on them and they're still youthful to you. And when their memory, or when there's someone in memory, or when there's somebody is no longer living that remembers their name and who they are, then they elevate to a higher sense of spiritual duty. Wow, that's deep. And then you have man. Anything with that holds intellect. Kintu will be animals, vegetation, nature. Hantu is the issue of time. And so with Africans, and we'll break it Hantu in a few minutes, and then and then Kuntu. Kuntu is the modality, how you express your spiritual oneness with the Creator. Ain't that something? The expression of your relationship to God. And so when you take a look at that, black folk got tons of modality. We sing, we dance, we jump, we shout, you name it. We surrender ourselves to showing our gratitude of our, of our worship. We give our praise. We give everything we can in our praise. That's not something we learned over here. That is something that is embedded in our DNA. It's who we are as a people, and it came so natural. Now, one of the things that we talked about uh, last time was the Hantu, which is how Africans look at time. And there are two areas of that time, and we're going to catch you up. And those two areas of the Hantu was the Sasa is the now, and the Zamani, which is the past. They have no bearing. They said very few tribes have a word that says future, because it is so pivotal to focus on the current moment that you live in. That's how sacred your time and your focus is in African spirituality. They don't want to be focused on something off on the clouds somewhere, something in the hereafter. No, that's not African. Can you produce your best life in God at this moment? And the individuals who are the oldest have more sasa time, more now time. And the Zamani is an unlimited time of existence previous. And it continues. It's an eternity of time. But they don't normally even, then you have practical time and actual time. Actual time is the Zamani. Practical time was things that you know what's going to happen. If I wake up tomorrow, the sun is going to rise. Practical time. That's future. That's as far as they can go, at least 2 years. And they don't have chronological time. Why? Because everything about them is based off of events, things that are cultural, things that are about the earth. It's a natural connection and interaction when they define themselves with time. We now in this Western world are pushed to deal with chronological time. Go, 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 go. And they make a joke. We always make a joke about that CPT time, the CP time, color people time. You must be on color people time. Right. Because I am where I'm supposed to be when I'm supposed to be there. If I could have gotten up early to get here right on time, I would have. But something happened. You know how they say we can have church all day? Yes, because when it's time to stop, we'll know it. But when God wants us to praise and give, we can't. People look at me and be like, how do you do what you do? Easy. I'm living in my sasa. That way. That way. How you do it? I can't. I'm trying to do that. I'm gonna learn how to point to stuff with virtual. But I'm living in my sasa. And I'm making sure my Zumani, I'm looking back. I'm not looking back and realizing that I wasted some sasa. No, you give everything you got to God as much as possible. That's how sacred it is. And even when you're standing still, they say the mantra of standing still. Africans believe when you're doing nothing, you're producing time. You're always in the production of time. So there's never a moment of non motion. Time. Everything happens at the right moment. And that's some of the patience. That's where you get the slow walking, is the gradual. Yeah, it's that time. And so we're going from there today, talking about the nature of God. Now, in this, I always ask everybody that please support World of Keebland and everything that we do, worldofkeebland.org. I was trying to build this in, and then I should have built the pop-ups in here where you get to see the website and everything else. That did not happen. So if you're watching us on Facebook, please hit like, comment, or share. If you're watching us via YouTube, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, because we are streaming 5 classes a week now, where next year is going to be a phenomenal year for World of Akibaland, and what we're doing for our community, what we're doing for black youth, and what we're doing for black families. It is time that we are focused on being the African God called us in the way that settles with our spirit, right? And so we're dealing with the nature of God. Now, we know that all, because we said there are 4,200. If there are 4,200 different tribes, there are 42 different means of expressing spirituality. And now that is being expressed through multiple different things, through multiple different ways. And you can express God, they express it through, because there's no written text. There is no written text for ancient African spirituality or spirituality at all. There's no written text. So when you're sitting there studying, you may hear proverbs, you may hear short statements, phrases, songs, prayers, even names. All our names are tied to our connection and our reverence for the Creator. That's why every African name has a meaning, because that's how much they revere God. I don't want to say a name, but we giving our kids all types of European names that has no beginning and ties them to no culture, no heritage, no anything. You may hear myths or stories, religious ceremonies, or even symbols. Everything about African spirituality and African culture reflects around their relationship with God. That's why we have that as a being the Africans in this American experience. Even those who are disconnected from the culture, you look at them giving praise. Woo! That's pure African. And you can't shake that. It's all they know. And so why, we throwing darts? Why throw darts if you understand who God is? And they may not completely, but look at how they give praise. That is pure African. Sometimes we don't know when we are being who he called us to be, who Mother, Father God has called us to be. And we will know that, we'll hear. And it's clear, in African culture, there are no atheists. Yeah, that's all European. You're not going to go over there and have no one not believe in the Creator. So as we take a look at how they see the nature of God, again, there's no written text. So when you go back to the book and you look at the book, if you happen to get it, and that's why we're going to open up the discussion. So maybe individuals who have read it, and I'll pull individuals who have read it before. We read a chapter and we'll discuss it and see how it relates to us. They say, the Ashanti proverb: no one shows a child the supreme being. No one shows a child the supreme being. You know how we see those African proverbs and we don't know where they came from, because that's how ancient they are. It's been said so many generations after generations after generation. It's an experience, and it holds true. And every time you hear a proverb, it's a spiritual relationship with God and people. And so what this one means from the Ashanti tribe means that everybody knows God. It's innate. It's like, how do you give birth and you live life and not know that you are a part of God? You don't indoctrinate your children. No. It's a part of living experiences, and they're able to experience it naturally if they're allowed to just be. Within the culture and traditions, you learn how to express yourself, but it is so entrenched in who we are. No one has to tell a child that That experience right there is God. That's God. You inhale, exhale, that's God. You see someone, they're God. You see your plant, they're God. You see an elephant, that's God. Everything is sacred, intrinsic. And so, how do we get back to that? We got to fight against that doctrinization. Now, like anything else, Africans see themselves and see God as omnipotent, omnipresent, and omnificent, all powerful, everywhere, and all knowing. There is no difference. So when you sit down and you're in your Europeanized Christian experience, thinking that you're looking down on someone who's African and wants to induce their culture, but they're not embracing, but and they're embracing Afrocentric means of relating to God. They don't see it any different than you do. What? But you condemn because they don't see it the way you do. What? But in Africa, 4,200 tribes, there can be 42 different views, and they're all revered and respected. That is the thing. And so, God is normally defined by historical, geological, social, or even cultural backgrounds of each and every people. It's not written down. It's a clear understanding. And in the and y'all gonna forgive me because I'm not always great at pronouncing these tribal names, but I'm gonna do my best for you. The Zulu and the Banwama, yeah, y'all see it. I said it good last night. Now when I'm talking, I get nervous. I can't say it. They call him the wise one. So how can you be wise? You're all knowing, you're all powerful, you're all seeing. They use it's expressions that they're familiar with. Just because they may not say it the way, you know, Christians are saying it, they still say the same thing. So looking down on something or turning on something, eh, that's not it. That's not how you do it. Everything is in reverence to the creator. In terms of Zulu and Yoruba tribes, they say no one escapes the judgment of God, meaning that He's going to see all. And remember when we talked about those proverbs? It's how they do it, and they relate it to everything. No one escapes the judgment of God. No, they didn't say he's omnipotent. They already know. It's just the phrases. It's a culture, a thing, and it's something that's been passed down from generation to generation. And that's where we got to get to the point where we're looking at, and then it shows what they realize that God has the final say. Hmm. Let us connect ourselves and realize that we're not separate. We're not disconnected from who we are as a people. So when you're embracing African culture, realize Christianity is the infant faith of ancient wisdom. And I've been saying it and saying it and saying it. I said I told somebody if I went back to school to get my PhD, that's exactly what my thesis will be. Proving, showing how Christianity is the infant faith of ancient wisdom. There's nothing new there. It's the foundation of it is all African. We just as a people have to take the time the same way they had I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day who went to seminary, and she was like, yeah, so you remember the Protestant Reformation, the one where the Protestants rebelled or protested against the Catholic Church? Yeah. I said, so where is the Reformation against Protestants? Where do we protest against a doctrinized faith, where we reclaim the infant faith of ancient wisdom and take it back so that it can do us some good? I told you I'm part of the Pan African Orthodox Christian Church, and we are the Reformed means of viewing Christianity as an African faith. So it allows you, when you understand the African culture, it allows you to pull out what is not right and place back in full and complete reverence of God. Now they also see, and when you're dealing with the power and presence of God, you have those proverbs that deal with things of how a people will relate according to where they live. So Africa is in the bush, they call it. One sister was like, "You looking for a wife? Won't you go to Africa and go to the bush?" I didn't understand. I was like, I ain't never been to Africa, and I don't know what they call the bush, but that's what it is. Go find a sister. I laughed. It says the plant protected by God, and you see the tribe who created the proverb. I almost said it. I wish I could pronounce it. We'll focus on that next time. The plant protected by God will not be hurt by the wind. Means God covers all. So the wind is coming. Destruction in terms of storms come, but God covers that. So if something makes it safe out of a storm, that was God's doing. And that's how they see it, because being in Africa, being in the motherland, being in that scenario where you might see the rains come and the strong winds come, and at the end the tree's still standing. Not only because it had roots, but God did that. God protected that. God was all of that. God protects the plant, so it's not hurt by the wind. And so all of nature is created in relationship to God. Hence, even, rains, you know, they got prayers for rain, they got prayers for floods, they got prayers for vegetation. Everything is expressed as a means of relating to the Creator. The nature of God is in all things when you deal with something African. It's not just a conversation where they got us with Christianity, Europeanized Christianity. We'll sit down and say, yo, you know, slavery can focus on, you can focus on a better life at the by and by. You're in a better place now. Wait a minute. You'll be in a better place when you die. Wait, I can be in a better place now. Everything is in an experience of God. My ups and my downs. Nothing separate is separate from the Creator. And so they see God in the things that they experience on a regular basis. And what was this next one? And I don't know in terms of how, and y'all have seen this before, and I'm gonna drop this one in a few minutes, where they see God in everything. And of course, if you're dealing with monotheism, polytheism, and animism, right? The different levels where, and then the Kintu, the Kuntu, Muntu, right? And I should have told you that NTU is the spirit that binds everything together. And I'll go back. Let me go back to that so y'all can see it. Where we at? If you see how everything ends with NTU, that is the spirit that binds all life together. NTU. It is the woven energy. People call it the Holy Spirit. On our side, that says it's just the NTU is the woven energy that connects God to all things and everything. Now, if y'all come tomorrow to Keebaland Children's Church, Keebaland Inspirational Sunday, oh, I got a lesson about that NTU coming. Very, very powerful. I will prove it scientifically. But you see how they relate everything to nature, God, because that's the thing that man can't control. So you know it's something greater than you. And I know, I've seen this quite a few times when the hurricane hits, where you sit down and you see that, and say they say that the true meaning of a hurricane is the women of our ancestry who got thrown over the ships, who are mad, and they crashing down, which is the justification, of God. That's God's justice for to taking people from one land and put them into another land and sub well, there I go, subjugating them to slavery. That's an issue. And they say everything is nature, so they don't see anything that's separate from God, and that's completely important. The spirit of God is inconceivable in some people's minds. You can't think of any concept where you understand and know God. It's inconceivable. They said there's certain groups and tribes that say, yeah, there's no way you can fully understand the Creator. There's no one being who can say they understand the Creator. Now, with Christianity faith, I know my battles with the Europeanized version, where if you don't accept your Lord Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you go straight to hell. How can you sit down and say that God is in your understanding? The vastness of God is in your understanding. That didn't even make sense to me. So I said, wait a minute. So did Gandhi go to hell? He ain't believing Jesus. I said, how about Buddha? When I was coming up, I was asking questions. Now I couldn't shake Christianity because I wanted it to have some root because of my family is Christian and Muslim. And Islam is also an infant faith of ancient wisdom. They both are. It's just the fact that Europeans said we're going to craft this one, but Africans will sit down and tell you, mm-mm. There's a word called Lunda in the which tribe this is. It's the Ashanti tribe. Well, Ashanti said the spirit of God is fathomless. You can't even imagine it. So don't even put it in your head. And there's a word called Lunda, means God of the unknown. I can't even tell you. I just see what I see. But that is only a microcosm without having scientific witness to say that it's unfathomable to understand the presence and power of God. However, we do have individuals who have the ability to tap into that power. And they do too. Some of them are they're priests, they're healers, they're ritual leaders. There's a slew of, and the same for us on this side in terms of more of a conventional, right? So that's traditional. We're going to say African spirituality is traditional religion, traditional faith, where it's a way of life that everybody understood and it was auditory, right? And so unfathomable. Uh, it is one tribe, the Gombani tribe, starts with an N and ends with an E, said that there is no word in the human dictionary. There's no word in the human vocabulary to understand the nature of God. There is nothing that you could say that gives you that complete definition. And I'm saying this just to show you how vast this experience is. For African people, they are not a small minded group. This is ancient wisdom that created civilization. And this is why I said I want to be able to show this so that when you're studying African history, you're studying the spirituality that particular culture came out of. You got to get the spiritual root of that people. If not, you'll never really understand that culture. And that's the importance of it. Now, when you talk about the moral attributes of God, and there's a song that says God is, and we sing it all the time in my community. They would in African culture. God is kind. God is merciful. God is caring. Uh, uh, there is. nothing that God does not experience. Not as a human form. No, because that's impossible. They what? No, it's all spiritual. God just is. It says that and even and God feels. And they talk about that when you're dealing with when you're dealing with typhoons and tornadoes and they said that is when you can experience the anger of God. Everything is God. There is nothing that is separate from God. So when you're seeing something, you say, okay, lightning. They say some tribes say lightning is God's expressions of anger. They said, and in one tribe they say the Katanga tribe, they say that God creates and He uncreates. Wow! When I read that, I paused. God gives you the blessing, and God will take it away. And sometimes they see it as just the angering of God. Floods, droughts, natural disasters. There's something someone did that upset the creator. Ain't that something? I would never want that to happen. They also in the Kimbaya tribe say that only if God's will, God is. Meaning that you can't create anything in your life outside of God allowing it to happen. You can't find a wife. You can't be wealthy. You can't get healthy. There's nothing that happens that you can achieve without God's assistance. God is always there. Anything outside of that is westernized. Now, when you have a people who believe that every time they're creating, doing, and producing something, that God is always present, that's a people who can create a vast civilization. That's a people who can create art, sciences, mathematics. Why? Because God is in all things, in everything that you do. There is no way to get around it. And that's why when you study your history and you see all the things that we created, you realize how much in favor we were with God. And so now at this turn where we're talking about the rise of the African on a global scale. And this is why I'm doing this. Because I'm trying to create those Marcus Garvey numbers where you have over 9 million people connecting and functioning from the fact that we are aligned. We are trying to be a people again aligned with the presence and the power of God. They said God governs all things, all things. And sometimes you have to invoke God's energy in a particular place. His will has to be invoked. I want to be married. Invoke His will. I'm hungry. I need to eat. Invoke His will. I need a new house. Invoke His will. And if He sees it fit, you will receive it at the time that God sees. True. This is African spirituality. You think you're studying something new. You think you're studying something separate than what Africans have already said for, man, beginnings of generations. No. Christianity is the infant of faith, of ancient wisdom. There is nothing new in Christianity that Africans and African spirituality had not birthed before. Right. Then even the justice of God has to be invoked. When you want to seek justice, when you sit down and where and now you're dealing with when dealing with the holiness, because you're invoking God in prayer, you're invoking God in dance, you're invoking God in sacrifices, you're invoking that spirit. But in that is the ultimate sense of reverence, because it's done with the utmost level of seriousness. And so when you go to God, and He said, how do you know uh, the reverence? Because there's nothing written. There's nothing written anywhere that discusses the reverence that they have for the Creator. I mean, if you just look at it, every African person, every African kid born has an African name that connects them back to the Creator, or something in nature that is connected to the Creator. Even if you were born on Friday, that's a day that the Creator's made. That's why that name is also sacred. So what happened on Friday? That's a spiritual day too. You can go Tuesday, born on a Monday. That's a blessed day. The holiness is God. It's just something just more reverence than we could even fathom. Mm, that connection. They say, now again, how they revere God is nothing written. But it's if you watch how they do rituals, everything has to have in every different culture. If there's 4,200 different tribes, there are 4,200 ways to view the Creator. Why? Because there's no one people and no one process that can understand the vastness of God. If you sitting there saying, "Oh, you stupid, you got this," all how do you say? How do you handle? Even it's funny. I remember reading something from Gandhi where they asked him what he felt about Christianity, and Gandhi said, if they take it back to its original foundation and actually did it right, it could be useful, but not the way they doing it now. Ain't that something? Gandhi, but he went to hell in certain people's eyes. Ain't that something? That's crazy. But the holiness of God. This is why, with in rituals and everything else, there are strict rules when you're praying. Woo! You know, I said you said please in our life. They'll say in our experiences, please assume an attitude of prayer. They warn you. That's not somebody asking you something. They're warning you. That's saying we're going to the Most High. Please prepare to be in His presence. Because if you come in a disrespectful nature, that will invoke God's anger. Everything is in reference to the Most High. When you make, now, this is something I can tell you we don't do as being American Africans. And I'm going to say American Africans this way because Americans, we have more American in us than we have African, right? And then when we call ourselves black, black doesn't have a culture. Black doesn't have a tradition. And the only thing black has is a history of being in an oppressed society. So when we say something to God versus when Africans say something to God, it's on a whole different level of reverence because it embodies everything about who they are. So when you remember the days you went out, you drank a little bit too much, and you went, God, please, if you help me, I would never do it again. You know that vow is deeply sacred when you speak. That's why I said you can't speak the Lord in vain. Where you think that came from? You think that came from Europeans speaking God's name in vain? No, that is African. And it shows again, these are practices that have existed way before the development of Christianity or Judaism or Islam. Way before any of it. These are where they were able to get the principles to create the Christian faith. Ain't that something? Please assume an attitude of prayer and to go into that space to speak to God. Reverence, they do not play. It is strict. There are things that no one that you can't do before you pray, and there are things that you can't do after you pray. Why? Because God's presence is being invoked. The holiness of God is so revered. This is why when you say if you make a promise or a vow and you shake a hand or whatever it is, that's unto God. But what Africans didn't know, the Europeans did not revere God the same way. They'll shake your hand and lie to you in a blink of an eye. So will these American Africans or blacks. I sat down and said, I'm not black, I'm Afro black. I'm Afro blue black. I'm Afro blue black. I'm trying to surrender everything and make everything in a place and experience of reverence. Brother, why do you do this work? Because my time is 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 precious to the creator. And I owe it to the creator for the life that he gave. That's not that's African spirituality. Nothing more, nothing less. Africans hold strict rules when performing rituals or ceremonies directed to God. That's why when you say a vow or oath or you and those are to God. I'm gonna make a vow to you in the presence of God. Wow. So that's why you couldn't get divorces because you invoked God into that relationship. I wish I'd have known then what I know now. And at this particular time in my life, I'm apologizing for not having as much reverence as I was supposed to, being in an environment that was supposed to help me produce it. There were certain things my eye didn't see. I see now. Now, what would it be if we could teach all our youth, black youth, everywhere, to understand the, the depth of spiritual awareness that we had before being indoctrinated? What would that life look like? What would that child produce? If you were watching African history class, we said that Afrocation and education from an African perspective, that's my word, two meanings. It shows a child how to function in an oppressive society, how to get through it, how to navigate through it. But it also teaches a child, a real education teaches a child how to come back as a people and be what God called us to be. That's a real education. That's a part of spirituality. That's when the holiness of God has nothing but pure reverence. Again, African spirituality academically, don't take my word for it. Grab the book, take a look. Let's read and communicate and talk about it together. And let us have a greater awareness of who we are in God. Hopefully, I get to see y'all tomorrow at the at the Akibaland. Sorry, I was getting ready for the closing. At the Akibaland Inspirational Sunday. Will be working this evening, putting it together. Uh, I am expressing my spiritual awareness, my connection, because I before I go, you know how they said they wanted to see a black president. I want to see a Pan African organization reach across the globe and be successful at bringing Garvey experience to black people before my transition. And if I have to help build that, I'm going to do everything I can. Hopefully, you'll join me for this Pan African experience. Let us see the rise of the African. One love.